Monitoring your phone while recording. Can you?
It's live, yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah, I think so.
It is live.
Oh, yeah.
Staring into this. Hi everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Leah. I do the marketing at Chiropractic Health Centres. We're with Andrew today and we're going to be talking about functional neurology. So first we just want to talk about your background in functional neurology.
Sure. Thanks Leah. So functional neurology is a study of understanding mechanisms of how brain parts communicate. But it really became, well, it's getting really quite big in chiropractic, especially in the States and Canada and Australia, because what we do see is a lot of patients who respond quite well to chiropractic, but then they don't hold their adjustment very well. And what I mean by that is that they feel better, but unless they come in very frequently, they're not going to be able to self-sustain health, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So functional neurology is basically when things have been ruled out by the medical community, such as an MRI scan, CT scan, they've done nerve reductions, and they can't find anything, but the patient is still struggling with a phantom leg pain, or they're struggling with really weird migraines, or just different neurological problems,
Yeah.
which cannot be diagnosed. So these are what are now in medical community called a functional neurological disorder.
Right.
And that's why I started studying functional neurology, which is very in-depth. The exam was 2 days. I studied in Imperial College for many years. Is to really help those people and see how sometimes you can put inputs into the spine, but really if you don't look at how the brain's controlling that, and if the brain cannot tolerate too much input, it's complex, but it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's really about understanding how the brain can tolerate stimulation, sensory stimulation, but sometimes you've got to put the right one in, otherwise you can overstimulate or it's very particular. So it's very interesting.
So would you say that there are symptoms that are associated with it, or like how would you describe?
Probably a functional. People who struggle with the more complex cases. We see a lot of cases with sciatica and migraines and stuff. But it's also people who come in with sciatica, but alongside that they don't realise it's related. They've got fatigue, they've got dizziness, they've got lightheaded when they go from sitting to standing, they've got gut issues, they've got bloating, they've got IBS. So really it's really a breakdown, and simply it's just looking at the body as how it's designed, i.e. the brain and the gut and the brain, and those two are the brains. The gut's the second brain. So it's working on the understanding of how the body actually functions.
Yeah, and so you would say that someone or a patient who maybe suffers with sciatica, this would be beneficial for them in terms of functional neurology treatments and things like that?
So in terms of, depends how you set your clinic up, but I always utilise the chiropractic alignment of the spine. Unless what my tests show, I mustn't use that initially, but generally we go back to that because that really helps with time. But it's for any symptom or syndrome ultimately, as long as they're not got a tumour in their brain, etc. We want to make sure that that's all been ruled out. But really it's to be more specific and understand what they're struggling with, as opposed to just from a chiropractic perspective is look at the spine and say, oh, that spine's jammed, this is not moving, you've got a bit of weakness there, and just fix that. So it's got a bigger understanding of the brain, really.
Yeah, fantastic. And like, what can we offer them in terms of like different treatments to help maybe aid the kind of symptoms or pains? Are there different types of treatments that we can offer?
So you can, if you look to your left there, there's motion gaze, which is basically or stability, and you probably can't see it, but we get people to wear a laser on the head and they go around and follow the maze with their eyes on the head. We use the lasers. We've got the lasers here, which were very expensive. Those are very good for regenerating nerves and cells and tissues. We use eye movements and eye exercises. We use quite a lot of eye therapy. So a lot of eye therapy is very, very important. The reason why eye therapy is important is because when you're embryologically designed in your mummy's tummy, just a few years ago, the soft tissues or the tissues or the cells that come from different parts, the eye muscles come from the same areas as your midline spine and those muscles, and other areas of your sympathetics that fire. So they're all linked. So if you can look at the spine but also look at eye movements and get those working better with posture, that makes a huge change to this body and our function. So it's really, really interesting in that regard. So we also have something called Right Eye, which is a tracking device. We're just uprooting it again, but again, costs many, like £15,000 to track eye movements, because that pertains to ultimately brain connections and brain health.
Fantastic, yeah, sounds
Does that make
good.
sense?
If anyone is experiencing any sort of symptoms or pains or anything like that, and you've heard of anything here that you think might help us, by all means give us a call, book in, and we're more than happy to help you.
Sure.
And we'll be back in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks, Leah. That's
No
brilliant.
problem.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Thanks for watching. Brilliant, Leah.